Hey everyone, my name's Noah. I've lurked here for a while now, mostly watching videos about cryptids and unexplained stuff. But what I caught yesterday while flying my new drone in the forest shook me so hard that I just have to get this off my chest. No one in my circle would believe this stuff, so I decided to share it here on YouTube. Before anyone asks, yes, I recorded the whole thing. Every second of, I don't even know what to call it. But when I got too close to those things, one of them swatted the drone right out of the air. The feed went black in an instant. I haven't gone out there to look for the micro SD card. I know roughly where it crashed, but I can't bring myself to hike out to that spot. Not after what I saw. No way in hell I'm going anywhere near those creatures. So no, I don't have the original footage. It's out in that ravine somewhere. Maybe smashed. Maybe still intact. Either way, I'll never know. So here's what happened. I'm a high school senior living in a small town in Montana. I'm not going to name it. It would be suicide. There are just too many sick internet trolls out there. Since my birthday last week, I've become a newly minted amateur drone nerd. After years of begging and pleading, my parents finally bought me a DJI Mini 4, complete with FPV gear and all. I've been dying to test its full range and camera. Yesterday, I finally took it on a proper flight through the nearby forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of wolves or a bear while pushing the signal limitations. It was early evening, right around twilight, when I decided to launch. I've always wanted to check out the woods at night, but I've never had the guts to go out there myself. The idea of stepping into that dense forest in the dark honestly freaked me out. But now, with the drone, I could finally do it. Experience that eerie thrill of flying through the trees in low light while staying safe and sound in my room. It felt like the perfect loophole. I was up in my room in our modest two-story house. The forest starts just beyond our backyard fence, stretching for miles into dense, pine-covered hills. I had the drone on the floor by my window and sat down on the bed with my FPV goggles on. Then, with a little thrill of excitement, I fired it up and piloted it straight out the open window, into the cool evening air and over the darkening treetops. I was testing a new infrared-style filter mod, scanning for signs of wildlife, maybe a wolf, maybe even a bear. At first, all I saw were a few scattered heat signatures, probably raccoons or rabbits, too small and distant to make out clearly from the altitude I was flying. The infrared-style mode showed them as little glowing blobs, but no details. I decided to descend lower, threading the drone carefully through the gaps in the canopy until I was flying just 10 to 20 feet above the forest floor. The view changed instantly. Shadows stretched long between the trunks, and every flicker of movement felt loaded with meaning. Within the first 5 minutes, the drone had covered nearly half a mile of ground, weaving silently through the woods like a ghost. About 10 minutes in, I saw a female grizzly and 2 cubs. The mother was large for a female, probably 300 or 400 pounds, her shoulders rippling under a thick coat of brown fur as she moved cautiously through the brush. The cubs, still small and clumsy, darted around her legs, play-fighting and occasionally climbing over fallen logs with the reckless energy of youth. But the mother appeared to be somewhat agitated. She paused often, standing up to sniff the air or glancing sharply at the trees around her. Her movements were tight, nervous, not the casual grace of an apex predator at ease. Something had her on edge. At first, I couldn't see what. From the drone's perspective, the forest looked empty beyond the bears, but her body language told me something was wrong, even if the camera hadn't caught it yet. Then I noticed something was off. The bear kept pausing, looking sharply in one direction more than once. I rotated the drone slowly, trying to catch whatever might have spooked her. At first, I saw nothing but trees and brush, silent, still. But then, about 200 feet away, I noticed a large infrared heat signature partially obscured by underbrush. It wasn't moving much, but it was definitely warm-blooded and big. The heat signature pulsed in and out of view through the vegetation, not shaped like any animal I could recognize from that distance. Worried about spooking the bears and whatever was watching them, I gently lifted the drone higher, climbing to about 50 feet. From that safer elevation, I eased the drone forward, inching closer to the unknown heat signature. The signal held steady, and the feed stayed clear as I drifted over the treetops. I tilted my gimbal down gradually as I moved to not lose sight of the creature I was trying to identify. My heart was hammering in my chest. Every branch, every gap in the underbrush felt like it might hide something. The infrared heat signature remained half hidden, but I could tell was getting closer. At that point, I assumed it was just another bear. Maybe a male grizzly trailing the sow, looking for a chance to steal food or snatch one of the cubs. I'd read that males sometimes stalk females for exactly that reason. It made sense, something big enough to make her nervous, staying just far enough away to avoid a fight. I figured I was about to catch something rare on film, a clash between two massive apex predators. That thought alone had my heart racing, pulse racing. But the closer I got to that hidden creature, the more wrong it felt. The heat signature didn't behave like a bear. It didn't shift weight or shuffle around. It stayed low, almost crouched, like it was deliberately hiding. That's not how bears act. A bear might bluff charge or rise up on its hind legs to assess a threat, but it wouldn't crouch in place like a soldier in ambush. This behavior was more like a feline predator, or maybe something like a human in camouflage, staying still, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It reminded me of footage I'd seen of mountain lions stalking prey from the underbrush, except this thing was much bigger and the proportions were all wrong. I adjusted the drone's angle again as I got closer and descended a little lower, curiosity and dread colliding in my chest. That's when it shifted, just slightly, but enough to break the illusion of stillness. The thermal outline flared into clearer view through a gap in the underbrush. What emerged was nothing like a mountain lion. Its silhouette was strange. At first glance, it reminded me of a massive wolf, but the way it moved was all wrong. Lopsided, twitchy, almost pained. The thermal caught its full heat signature now. Big, alive, radiating intensity. Way too tall and bulky for a wolf or even a cat, and somehow misshapen. Its spine hunched at an unnatural angle. I could make out a crooked gait, the uneven rise and fall of its limbs as it repositioned itself in the undergrowth. One arm, or what looked like an arm, was longer than the other, ending in a twisted set of digits or claws that curled around a branch as it watched the bears. The thing's head was low, the neck unnaturally bent, like it had to crane forward to stay balanced. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a gorilla. It had gray, cracked skin, littered with sparse patches of fur. I had never seen anything like it before. Not on TV, not on YouTube, not anywhere. It didn't look like a normal animal at all. Then, it began to move. Slowly, deliberately, it crept out of the brush, circling wide around the bear family like a predator testing its angle. It kept low to the ground, its long limbs moving in uneven synchronization as it stalked through the forest debris. Each step was calculated, quiet, drawing it gradually closer. And then, to my shock, it reached a tree, paused, and, like something out of a nightmare, pulled itself upright. It used the trunk for balance, claws scraping the bark as it straightened into an unsteady bipedal stance. I'd never seen anything move like that. The creature stood tall, its shoulders hunched and lopsided, chest heaving slightly. And for the first time, I saw its face. It wasn't a face, not really. It was something in between. The snout was too short for a proper muzzle, but far too long to be human. The mouth hung open just slightly, revealing uneven rows of jagged, discolored teeth. One eye was milky, maybe blind, while the other burned with a yellow light that pierced through the foliage. Its expression, if you could call it that, was unreadable. Not rage, not hunger, something colder, more aware. In that moment, watching it stand like that, fully revealed under the drone's gaze, I felt pure, paralyzing terror, like it was looking through the screen and straight at me. And in that moment, I couldn't pretend it was anything else. Not a sick bear, not a mutated coyote, not a deranged human. Everything I saw, its build, its posture, its stare, screamed one word that my rational brain wanted to reject but couldn't. Werewolf. Not the kind from movies, but something real, raw, and horrifying. A living nightmare pulled straight from some buried biological hell. And as I studied it closer, against every instinct telling me to look away, I noticed something else. Two pendulous masses hung heavily from its chest, swaying slightly as it shifted upright, covered in fur, twisted and sagging, but undeniably feminine. Its hips, too, were slightly wider than I would have expected for something that moved like that, its body thick through the middle but tapering sharply at the waist before flaring again. It wasn't just a werewolf, it was a female werewolf, and that detail somehow made it worse, more grotesque, more real. This wasn't just some one-off monster. It was something that might have been a woman at some point, and now it was something else entirely, having suffered some unimaginable, horrible fate. The werewolf sniffed the air, slow and deliberate, lifting its disfigured head and flaring wide, twitching nostrils. Its chest expanded with a wet-sounding inhale that I could almost feel through the audio feed. A moment later, it dropped back down to all fours with an audible grunt, its limbs folding in awkwardly as it began creeping toward the bear family. It moved in a wide arc, circling the clearing like a shark, drawing closer with each step. I watched as it tried to stay low, crawling and slinking with this grotesque gait that didn't belong to anything fully quadrupedal or bipedal. Its back legs were too bent, its arms too long, its spine too twisted for either style of movement to look natural. Every few steps, it would falter and shift weight, almost like its own body was fighting itself. The thing was trying to be stealthy, but it looked like evolution had been scrambled mid-process, and yet it was closing in. The mother bear finally noticed the approaching creature and seemed to be roaring, but, of course, I couldn't hear it, as I was only watching through the drone camera. The bear rose up onto its hind legs, fur bristling, and eyes locked in the direction of the threat. The bear's front paws curled, ready to strike, and its posture shifted into full-on defensive mode, placing itself squarely between the creature and the cubs. The werewolf hesitated, its body tensing in response. It didn't retreat outright, but it veered slightly, shifting its angle, limping to the side as it began a slow, methodical circle. It was still stalking, still drawing closer, but now it was testing the bear's resolve, calculating. I followed with the drone, watching this surreal standoff unfold for a couple of minutes, the tension in the forest thick enough to feel even from 50 feet up. Eventually, the werewolf, probably desperate for a meal, made its move. It lunged from the shadows in a full-on frontal assault, snarling with raw, guttural fury. The mother bear wheeled around just in time, and the two predators collided with bone-shaking force that sent debris flying into the underbrush. The werewolf launched itself with surprising speed and coordination, teeth bared, claws outstretched, aiming directly for the bear's upper body. But the grizzly did not flinch. In a single, explosive motion, it reared back and slammed one of its massive forepaws directly into the strange creature's face. The blow was devastating, mass and raw power meeting reckless aggression. The werewolf's head snapped to the side and its body crumpled mid-air, crashing face first into the dirt. For a second, it didn't move, stunned or dazed, maybe both, but then it snarled, twisted onto its side, and pushed itself up, blood already pouring from its torn snout. The bear reared up again, daring its opponent to come closer. The fight had only just begun, and already the werewolf was bleeding. But it didn't back down. It lunged again, this time dodging the incoming swipe with surprising agility, and managed to latch onto the bear's shoulder. Its jaws clamped down with brutal force, burying jagged teeth deep into flesh and muscle. The bear roared, twisting violently as the werewolf's claws dug in, shredding fur and opening glistening lines across its flank. The creature was relentless, thrashing like a machine possessed, trying to drag the grizzly off balance. Its limbs coiled around the bear's side in an almost ape-like grip, holding tight as it raked, tore, and bit in an increasingly frantic manner. For a moment, it seemed to have the upper hand. The bear stumbled slightly under the pain and weight of the thrashing werewolf, snapping its jaws blindly toward the attacker's limbs. But even then, the werewolf kept tearing, its snout soaked in blood, eyes wild, jaws snapping again and again. It was like watching a rabid dog tear through meat, only larger, more deliberate, and horrifyingly intelligent. There was nothing graceful or smart about its movements. It attacked with blind rage. I've seen documentaries about wolves, lions, even hyenas tearing into prey. This was something else. This thing was frantic and barely coordinated in its savagery, not at all like a normal predator. Watching the way it moved, jerky, frantic, attacking without coordination, I couldn't shake the thought that its brain had been damaged or altered by whatever had transformed it into this grotesque thing. It was like witnessing a machine built for destruction, but one that had forgotten how to operate smoothly. Something was broken inside it, not just physically, but neurologically. That made it even more terrifying. With just as much fury, the grizzly retaliated. It threw its massive body into the fight, charging forward and slamming both itself and the werewolf against the nearest tree trunk. The impact shook the tree, and bark exploded from the trunk in a shower of splinters. The werewolf's jaws came loose, and it seemed to let out a long, strangled yelp or groan as its grip faltered. Seizing the opportunity, the bear clamped its jaws down hard around one of the werewolf's legs. It was a sickening crunch, so loud I could practically feel it, even though the drone didn't record sound. My brain just filled it in. The werewolf thrashed desperately, its free back leg kicking wildly as it tried to tear free from the grizzly's bite. It managed to twist enough to rake one claw across the bear's side, but it held fast, dragging the werewolf downward into the dirt as it bit down harder. For a few brutal seconds, it looked like the bear might tear the leg off. Still, it refused to give up. The creature twisted, snapped, and tried to reposition, clawing desperately at the bear. But the grizzly was relentless. Its paw pushed down hard on the werewolf's ribcage, its sheer weight and strength pinning it firmly to the ground. Dust and fur flew in all directions. The werewolf flailed, kicking and thrashing violently, but it couldn't get enough leverage to escape. One of its limbs was still trapped in the bear's crushing bite, and now it stood directly over the werewolf, a towering wall of muscle and rage. For the first time, the creature looked vulnerable. Its twisted limbs splayed awkwardly beneath the bear's bulk. The angle of its body made it nearly impossible to fight back effectively. If the bear had shifted its weight just slightly, it might have crushed the thing's upper body entirely. The werewolf writhed harder, seemingly realizing the precariousness of the situation. Its free claws scrabbled at the ground for traction, but the forest floor gave little in return. It was pinned, outmatched, and visibly hurt. Just when it looked like the fight was over, the werewolf managed to twist its beaten body one more time. With great effort, it craned its neck and sank its teeth into the bear's front paw. The bear twitched in pain, stumbling back just enough for the creature to wriggle out from beneath its other paw. Bloodied and battered, the werewolf scrambled away, limping into the darkness of the forest, leaving behind a shaken but victorious mother bear and two unharmed cubs. But it wasn't over. Just minutes later, while the mother bear was preoccupied licking blood from her wounds, the werewolf returned. It crept silently through the underbrush, still limping, but still able to move low and deliberate. I don't know how it got so close without the mother bear noticing, but it did. Maybe the fight had dulled her senses, or maybe she thought the creature had fled for good. Whatever the reason, she didn't see it coming. In a blur, the werewolf lunged out from a bush and snatched one of the cubs in a single motion. It all happened so fast. The bear didn't even have time to turn its head before the werewolf bolted back into the trees with its prey. The bear was way too slow. It did run after the attacker eventually, but the werewolf had already vanished into the forest, too fast for even the drone to keep up. I know that sounds like it should have been the end of the story, and it could have been. But as hard as it is to believe, things got even weirder after the fight. I glanced at my battery status, just over 10 minutes left, thanks to the plus battery. I didn't hesitate. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. I knew I couldn't stop there. I had to know where the werewolf was going, where its lair was. I swung the drone around and accelerated hard, chasing after the werewolf's fading heat signature through the dense forest. I dropped lower, weaving between branches, navigating on instinct and adrenaline. Whatever was about to happen next, I was going to see it, no matter how much it scared the hell out of me. The creature led me to a ravine, about half a mile from the location where it had fought the bear, and about 1.25 miles from town. It ran towards a jagged, overgrown gash carved into the hillside, nearly invisible beneath the tangle of roots and wild grass that spilled over its rim. It was the kind of place you'd walk right past without ever noticing, unless you were specifically looking for something hidden. At the base was an old drainage pipe, wide enough for a person to crawl through. The area around it was littered with garbage, matted blankets, torn garbage bags, and half a dumpster. Rusted shopping carts and a broken cooler sat half-submerged in the mud, as if someone had been hoarding scavenged materials. Bones of all sizes littered the ground, some clearly animal, others disturbingly ambiguous. Long femurs, broken ribs, tiny skulls, all half buried in the wet earth or scattered among the debris like forgotten relics. The den reeked of decay even through the screen. Stained mattresses and shredded fabric arranged into something that resembled a nest. There were gnawed carcass remains shoved into dark corners, and trails in the dirt where something large had dragged prey in and out. This wasn't just a place to sleep. This was a feeding ground, a lair. That's where it lived. But it wasn't alone. Another figure crawled out of the den, and I swear, I nearly tore the goggles off my face when I saw her. For a split second, I thought it was a woman. She was moving on all fours, wearing only a torn nightgown that was completely covered in dirt, an unmistakable remnant of a human past. It wasn't some random piece of fabric. It looked lived in, familiar, like something she might have worn before the transformation began. The sight of it hit me harder than I expected. She hadn't always been like this. That gown meant she was someone once, a daughter, a friend, maybe even a neighbor. Now she was crawling through the mud, unrecognizable, consumed and broken by whatever was changing her from the inside out. Her skin was smeared with filth, but the outline of her body was unmistakably human, feminine even. But the illusion shattered with each step she took. Her limbs were too long and twisted, her spine visibly curved, and her movements lacked all human rhythm. Her arms, especially, hung low like a primate's, dragging slightly in the dirt as she moved. When she turned to sniff the air, like a wild animal, I saw her eyes, wide, glowing faintly in the drone's infrared feed. The same sick shimmer I'd seen in the other one. Then came the worst part, her jaw. It didn't sit right. The lower half jutted slightly forward, and as she exhaled, I caught a glimpse of her teeth, uneven, broken, sharp, like her mouth was stuck halfway between that of a woman and something else entirely. Tufts of bristling fur dotted her exposed shoulders and lower legs, forming uneven patches that looked like they were erupting through the skin. I felt my breath catch. It was like watching someone mid-transformation, frozen halfway between species. Not a monster yet, but not a person anymore either. I knew instantly, whatever she was turning into, it was the same thing as the beast that killed the bear cub. She was a werewolf, but not as far gone. A transitional stage by the looks of it. Looking at those creatures, my mind immediately came up with theories. Maybe those things were the result of some twisted genetic experiment. Maybe a military bioweapon gone rogue. Something the government buried in the woods years ago and hoped no one would find. Or they're infected with some kind of disease. A disease that seemed to change a fully grown human body in impossible ways. Like a virus or parasite rewriting a person from the inside out. I'd read about that theory online. Discussions of viral contagion causing irreversible changes. But the sources were always vague, speculative, or straight up BS. Fringe forums, cryptid threads, and badly formatted PDFs passed around like forbidden knowledge. Nothing official, obviously. But after what I saw, it made too much sense. Either way, those terrifying creatures shouldn't be allowed to exist. And yet, there they were, stalking the woods within walking distance of my home. The larger one of the two werewolves, the one that fought the bear, dragged the cub into the den and dropped it on a dirty blanket. Almost immediately, the smaller one, the one that still vaguely looked like a woman, sprang forward on all fours and grabbed the cub with both hands and teeth. She began biting at the neck and shoulder with erratic, frantic jerks, like an animal that had been starved for days. But she didn't get far. The larger one exploded into motion with shocking speed. In an instant, she slammed her body into the smaller one, knocking her to the side and then pouncing directly on top of her. Claws sank deep into the smaller one's shoulder, and yellowed teeth clamped around the side of her neck, not to kill, but to punish. The smaller creature seemed to let out a desperate cry of pain and went limp beneath the monster. For several tense seconds, the larger one held her there, breathing hard, dripping saliva onto the smaller one's face. Then she slowly released her grip and turned back to her prey, tearing into the carcass with savage hunger. No hesitation, no remorse. The smaller one slinked back a few feet, trembling, and waited in silence. Only after the dominant werewolf had finished her messy meal, the smaller one crept forward again and began feeding on what was left. There was a clear hierarchy, similar to that of a wolf pack or a lion pride. At that point, I got cocky. I'd been flying for about 20 minutes. The battery was still above 20%. I thought I could edge a little closer, get at least one close-up shot of the werewolves while they both seemed distracted. I dropped altitude quickly, repositioning the drone to get the best angle. I must have breached some invisible threshold, because in a blur of motion, the big one turned. Her eyes locked on the drone with terrifying speed and precision, and then she lunged. One massive clawed arm swatted through the air with enough force to send the drone spinning wildly. For a split second, I saw the image distort, just flashing green and static, then nothing. The feed went dead. Just like that, everything went black. She'd destroyed it. And I had lost all my footage that would have made history. It still drives me crazy thinking about it. The clearest evidence of something inhuman, and I watched it get swatted out of the sky like a bug. One tiny mistake and everything was gone in an instant. But I'm not giving up, not even close. I barely had time to pull the headset off before I was on my laptop, opening Amazon with shaking hands. 5 minutes, maybe less, after that thing destroyed my drone. I was ordering a replacement. Same model. I even paid extra for express shipping. It wiped out my entire savings. Every cent I'd tucked away from birthdays, holidays, mowing lawns. I didn't hesitate for a second. It felt like an obsession now, like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to and couldn't walk away from. I needed to go back, needed to know more. Whatever those things are, they're still out there, and now I knew where they lived.